I'm Riley Chow, and I'm here with Kevin Jacobsen and Luca Giliberti, and we're going to be talking about the comedy supporting races at this year's Emmys, what we're predicting to be nominated. So last year, Tony Shalhoub won Comedy Supporting Actor. Luca, how many of his co-stars are getting nominated this year?
Well, as of now, I have two of his co-stars getting in. I have Leroy McClain, who had a very nice role in the third season. It might have not been the biggest role, but I feel like a lot of people took to his performance. And then I have Michael Zegan, who's been on the show since the very first season. I feel like he will benefit from the wide open category. His character is not, there are better characters or more liked characters on the show, but I feel like he's someone who might just have to wait his turn, and I feel like this could be the year. I probably should have Sterling K. Brown because he's an Emmy darling. He's won twice, and he's been all over everywhere in the last few years, but his role was barely managed to be in the supporting categories, or in other words, he barely missed guest to be eligible for guests. So I don't know if they really will vote for him in supporting, but he's Sterling K. Brown. It's the marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I don't see why realistically he shouldn't get in, but if they watch this season, then that's the reason why. The reason why I have Marvelous Mrs. Maisel even getting 3 slots is because it won SAG Ensemble earlier this year over Fleabag, which won Best Comedy Series at the Emmys last year. Maisel won 4 acting Emmys last year for its second season, even though it didn't win Best Comedy Series. So I think it's proven that it's a favorite in these acting categories, sort of like This Is Us and The Handmaid's Tale are on the drama side.
And I do have Sterling K. Brown in mine. I do not have Leroy McClain or Michael Zegan because he's who he is. Right. I think there was a lot of excitement with the fact that he was going to be on this third season. If people don't watch it, I assume he will do even better than those who have watched it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Just because, So, I mean, he's clearly not going to be a winner contender, but it does bum me out that he was not eligible for guest, because that is so clearly what that role was designed to be, and he barely even registers in the third season. So, I do think just the unlikability of Joel will make it difficult for Michael Zegan, even though he plays that role very well, very specifically. I just think he's one of those people who never really gets the kind of recognition that maybe he deserves, even with like critics' reviews. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I think all that is entirely valid. Kevin, I love what you said about, he is who he is. So that's why you're predicting Sterling K. Brown for a nomination. Yeah. I'm not predicting him just because kind of as this Emmy season has gone on, I feel like I haven't ever heard anybody say that he deserves to be nominated. It's just every time he's brought up, it's
when is that one?
And there are other predictions I'm making in this category that are along those lines. But yeah, that's why I don't have him, since it seems like Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is a very popular show with the acting branch. So maybe they are watching it and being a bit more discerning. That's why I have Leroy McClain, since it does seem like people quite enjoyed his character, his art, his performance, and even the Gold Derby interview that we did with him has tens of thousands of views for this unknown actor. They're also pushing one of his songs in the music race, music lyrics. Okay, what about Schitt's Creek? That is a show that has not been nominated in this category before, and now they're probably going to be pushing several supporting actors. So, Luca, who do you have from that cast getting in here?
As of now, I only have Dan Levy, just because Schitt's Creek is a show that I had breaking into a lot of categories at the beginning. I felt like it had all this passion because it was nominated last year and because this was the final season. So at one point I had Noah Reid in this category, and I feel like he could definitely get in. because sometimes when these shows are, you know, in the top 2 spots for best comedy series, and I feel like we all agree that Schitt's Creek is definitely in one of the first 2 spots. It definitely can net a lot of acting nominations, but I'm wondering if we are almost overestimating it, if it might just get in its core 4 actors, which is why I only have him in at the moment. But if The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel gets in the 3 actors and voters don't feel the urge to vote for Tony Shalhoub again, maybe Dan Levy just wins because he's the only Schitt's Creek actor in this category. We know he could be nominated for writing, and I assume he will be. So that might propel his chances either here or in the writing category. So that's where I stand with Schitt's Creek at the moment. But if it gets in more than 1 actor, I wouldn't be surprised at all. We also have Chris Elliott, obviously. He could also get nominated, but again, I'm not sure if someone outside of Dan Levy's nominated, which one it would be.
Yeah, I also only have Dan Levy, but I definitely think there is a possibility for Chris Elliott or Noah Reid. Chris Elliott is sort of the most openly, broadly comedic performance on the show. It's not always the most loved performance as much compared to just what the core cast is doing, obviously, but he was on Everybody Loves Raymond. He's certainly been in the business for a while. And could very much be kind of a coattail nomination there. And he has been on from the beginning. And so even people who are just starting Schitt's Creek will have an appreciation for him compared to Noah Reid, who is still, I mean, Noah Reid is fantastic. And one of the obviously core of the relationship there that so many people love. So, yeah, I think there are possibilities, but not quite able to break through, even if I think, you know, Schitt's Creek could very well just win comedy series. I still think the other players might struggle.
Yeah, it's tricky this year because we have so many comedies missing from the field. You know, we don't have Fleabag, we don't have Veep because they're ended, we don't have Atlanta, Russian Doll, or Barry because they're taking the year off. So I feel like, what comedies do people actually like this year? Right. Have they found new comedies like Space Force or Run to latch onto, or are they just going to double down on, you know, shows that we know that they like? And I feel like Schitt's Creek is a show that they like and is a show that has been increasing, you know, with its buzz and support. And I feel like also just kind of the mood of it is what people want to escape to these days. So I feel like it'll be big. I've got Chris Elliott because of who he is, because he's been in the industry for a long time. He's been recognized by the Emmys. But it does seem like, you know, fans of the show actually prefer Noah Reid, who's more of a fan favorite character. But like Luca said, you know, maybe we should be a little apprehensive about just predicting this explosion.
And one thing I would like to add is I'm not sure, is there a release date for Schitt's Creek on Netflix? Because I feel like that's something
I think it's this month.
Oh, it is this month.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's something that could definitely work in the show's favor everywhere, because I think we all agree that it absolutely helped the show get in last year, and it's helped other shows like The Good Place break through at the Emmys. So the fact that if it is coming out this month, that's something I would factor in, and especially in these acting categories, because they are so wide open. And if they really are checking off Schitt's Creek across the board, then we might be able to get 2 actors in here. But there are also other people we should probably mention here, and that is James Marsden.
You don't want to just end there?
No. We have James Marsden for Dead to Me. I don't want to spoil why or how he appears in the second season for people who haven't seen it yet, but the way in which they brought him back.
That's kind of a spoiler.
Right. Well, but the way in which they brought him back, or they managed to bring him back, was very interesting, and I feel like he gave a great performance, and I think Dead to Me is going to get a lot of more nominations this year than it did last year. Obviously, I feel like it'll get into comedy series, and we already talked about the 2 actresses getting in. And James Marsden is someone who always is sort of overshadowed by his co-stars, or his co-stars get in, or his show does well, but he never gets nominated. He could benefit from visibility. He was also on Mrs. America, which just finished its run. His role wasn't big in it, but if we're assuming voters were watching it, that could help him. And the role he plays in the second season of Dead to Me could help him, because I feel like it's something he hasn't really done. It's not something he has done on the show, and it's not something I've seen him do in a long time. So I'm very hopeful that he gets in.
Yeah. And it also plays to his strengths, I think, as an actor very well. It suits him very well.
Mm-hmm.
There's also Alan Arkin, the Kaminsky Method. It's a bit of a question mark, but he is who he is. He's getting in at SAG and doing very well. So that just feels like an easy name check. I stopped watching the Kaminsky Method, so I can't speak to his performance in season 2, but I assume it's more of the same. So
yeah, it feels like there's quite a drop off between the first and the second season for some reason, which does concern me if it's just going to be blanked for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know.
But then, I mean, we also have Kenan Thompson for Saturday Night Live, who's actually in the top 6 in our odds. He's someone who was nominated for the first time 2 years ago. So realistically, like we mentioned in lead actor, if you're someone who was nominated and missed last year because the field was a bit more competitive, maybe it's an easy way back for you this year. And the same goes for Louie Anderson for Baskets. It's been a while since he was last nominated, but he won unexpectedly in 2016. And I just don't know if the buzz around that show was still there. But again, we could see so many returnees from past years. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see either one or both get in.
Or Alec Baldwin for SNL as Donald Trump.
Right.
Not again. Not again.
but it wouldn't be surprising.
He came back when we weren't expecting it.
Yeah.
It's an election year, so.
Yeah. And what about Mahershala Ali for Ron?
I have
Yeah, you have him.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do. I mean, certainly one of the more beloved actors. That's hard to argue at this point. And for those who have seen Rami, maybe it's not a lot of people, as has been suggested, but I think it was a very buzzed performance, what he's doing in that show. And I just have him getting in as not necessarily a name check, but certainly someone who is very recognized by awards groups quite a bit over the past few years, and is also giving a very good performance, and is at the top of the ballot.
And he's been nominated before at the Emmys, so for House of Cards, so that might just help him as well. And I could even see someone like Ty Burrell, just unsurprisingly, surprisingly, just making a return. I feel like Modern Family is a show that benefited from this, situation, and it just aired its final season. So maybe there is some goodwill or some passion for it. Ty Burrell was nominated so many times. He won several times. He was nominated when everyone else from the show was dropped, when the show was dropped in comedy series. So I feel like he's someone who could easily return, especially since his character on the show is so beloved. And that's someone we should probably look out for. And we mentioned The Great before in lead actress, so we probably should mention Nicholas Hoult, who is someone, again, who's been appearing in so many movies, more so than television lately. But if the show does well, maybe he just sneaks in as well.
Yeah, The Great does seem to have good reviews. But again, the buzz just seems kind of quiet.
Right. And what about Marc Maron for Glow?
Yeah, I mean, he should have won for the first season. I feel like he has kind of entered contention in a very unfortunate way this year. But yeah, he could be nominated.
Right.
All right.
John Malkovich.
For Space Force.
Probably not.
But if the show is widely seen and people can, even though it's not necessarily well reviewed, maybe audiences still latched on to it and liked it. And if they did, then maybe we do see Steve Carell get in and we see John Malkovich get in. It wouldn't surprise me at all. But yeah, it's someone I wouldn't prioritize in my predictions, but someone we should definitely look out for.
All right, let's jump over to the other category, which is comedy supporting actress. Kevin, basically same question. How many do you have from The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and how many do you have from Schitt's Creek?
I actually have 2 for each. So, yes, I have Alex Borstein and Emmy darling Jane Lynch making the jump from guest to supporting. I don't have Maron Hinkle just because I feel like her second season had more acclaim and she had more to do in the second season than she did in season 3. But obviously is someone that many people are predicting and very well could get in, and I would not be shocked at all if she did. But then for Schitt's Creek, I do have Annie Murphy, as many people have, but then I also have Emily Hampshire. So she is someone who did well at the Canadian Screen Awards.
She's never lost.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that is such a sympathetic character of Stevie that, yeah, I think she is very much someone that people are underestimating.
Yeah. I still have all 3 Maisel women in because, as I mentioned earlier, I think after it won 4 acting Emmys last year, after it won the SAG Award for Ensemble earlier this year, I feel like it's become one of those shows that Emmy voters are just going to check off everywhere, especially in these acting categories. I mean, everyone who's seen the shows knows why actors love it. They give these big, huge performances, and the dialogue is very specific, and the way in which the actors deliver it is something I think the TV Academy just absolutely adores. I don't see why Maron Hinkle would miss because she was nominated last year, and I feel like that she just needed to get in, and I feel she might just stay in the category for quite a few years. But if voters watch the 3rd season, then you might be absolutely right, Kevin. And Jane Lynch has been nominated twice for the show and won once, but in guest actress. So this is the first time for her competing here. But as you said, she's an Emmy darling, and people love this role on the show. So I see her getting in. I only have Annie Murphy for Schitt's Creek at the moment for the same reason why I only have Dan Levy in supporting actor. But again, if Schitt's Creek just, if I'm wrong and Schitt's Creek is going to be a priority for actors, then definitely she has a chance of getting in. And I had her in at one point earlier this season. I'm just, as I said, I'm starting to worry whether it's being overestimated in the acting categories a tiny bit.
Yeah, I've got the 3 Maisel women, the 2 Schitt women, and I have Kate McKinnon for SNL. How do you feel about Kate McKinnon, hanging on for another year? Do you feel like there's any possibility that the Emmys are going to move on?
No.
I thought
just checking. Yeah.
I feel like obviously SNL is not as strong as it was in 2017, for example, or 2018, when there were 3 SNL women getting into this category. But I feel like Kate McKinnon is going to be that one that just holds on to that nomination forever. And
until she leaves the show.
Exactly. And she's just beloved by actors. They love her on this show. So I don't see how she misses, even though I will admit I had her out at one point because I feel like there are other contenders here who could get nominated. And one of them who was underestimated at the beginning and took a while to get into our top 6 was Betty Gilpin for Glow, who has never not been nominated for the show. She's been nominated twice. She got in the first season when some of her co-stars didn't. And then she was nominated for the second when the show didn't even get into comedy series. But one thing we should probably mention is that we should expect this category to be 8 nominees, since it has been for the last 2 years, I believe. So that if it isn't 8 nominees, then someone like Betty Gilpin could be in trouble because maybe she was just in 7th or 8th place. It's not anything we know for a fact, but that could hurt her. But as of now, I still have her, even though Glow could use a bigger push, or just also aired such a long time ago. but I'm keeping her in for the time being.
Okay, Kevin, you don't have Betty Gilpin. You've got Darcy Carton instead.
Makes sense.
Yes. That is going back to a little bit of hope dicting, I guess you could say. I was very shocked when she did not get in last year, even not even to get into that 8 nominee field. It was really shocking to me when she had that Janet's episode that was such a showcase for her talent. And so many people were talking about her in the press, and just fans just loved her. And she is such a standout. She was for all 4 seasons. The reason I have her in is just the sense that this is the last time that they could reward her. Not that the Emmys are always very sentimental for that sort of thing, but just, I think her being on a show that is clearly a top 4, I would argue, in comedy series is going to help her. And, the fact that people like Anna Klumsky and the 2 Fleabag women are gone now could very well help her, plus Sarah Goldberg. So, I think if there enough turnover happens the way it does, then I think she has been always someone who has been in contention there, and this could finally be her opportunity to break through. I'm not really expecting it to happen, but I just have her here just as one last shot, just because I want it to happen.
I feel like it could definitely happen with the show being in the top 4, as you mentioned, and Ted Danson definitely getting in, and there's a possibility that Christian Bale gets in as well. Maybe they just all benefit from this being the final season and from the comedy categories being not as stacked as they were last year. So she's someone I definitely have in like 7th or 8th place. But for me, it was between her, Emily Hampshire, and Betty Gilpin, and I just went for the person who's been nominated twice for her show. But again, we could just have 8 nominees, and maybe she just...
And maybe we're all right.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like the top 8 here is actually really set among the 8 that we're predicting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
beyond that, I guess we've got Adie Bryant. She was nominated a couple of years ago. She wasn't nominated last year, but maybe last year Leslie Jones stole some votes away, and now SNL support will be a bit more concentrated.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, beyond that, I feel like I would start saying, maybe Susie Essman will finally get recognized for Curb Your Enthusiasm, since that's definitely getting nominated. So, I don't know.
Or we also have, I'm just going to mention, we do have 2018's nominee Laurie Metcalf, but she's now in contention for the Connors, obviously. We know how much the Emmys love Laurie Metcalf. I don't think that show has that much buzz anymore, but you never know with her. I'm going to mention Jessica Lange for The Politician, because she is Jessica Lange, 10-time Emmy nominee. And it's, again, a Ryan Murphy show, and the Academy loves Ryan Murphy. Her character in that show is wild. So if Emmy voters, and her character is wild, and it's also comedic and entertaining at the same time. So if the show does better than we think it will do, then she might just get nominated because she is Jessica Lange. And one person I would like to mention is Yvonne Orji for Insecure. I feel like she's someone who year after year people have been asked, or not asked, but people have wanted her to get nominated for this show. And if Insecure is in a better position this year because of when it's airing, and because the comedy categories are not as stacked as in previous years, then maybe it doesn't only get an Issa Rae, but also a supporting actress in this case. So maybe she's the surprising nomination that we didn't see coming.
And also, she just had a comedy special air on HBO.
Right.
So visibility.
And I guess, Riley, you might want to mention them, which is the Modern Love, how it might do in these categories.
Not really, but last year we had 8 nominees in this category. The top 6 in our odds got nominated, as well as the person who was in 10th, as well as Sean Clifford, who was in 32nd in our odds. So, maybe we're wrong here, as we have been.
Right.
Kevin, do you have any final thoughts on these comedy supporting categories?
No, it's going to be probably a battle with Maisel and Schitt's Creek, clearly, and I think that's kind of shaping up to be what this whole comedy race this year is going to be. And I'm curious to see if someone like Alex Borstein just goes ahead and three-peats, which I think is a very good possibility at this point. And then I'm also curious to see if Tony Shalhoub just wins again, or if we could see a Dan Levy win, who I do have in the number one position. Certainly someone who has had his profile raised immensely over the past year or two. And I could definitely see people getting behind him. But winning is far down the road. We have to see nominations first.
All right. Well, go to goldderby.com to make your Emmy predictions or update the ones that you already have.